My name is Jennifer Chimboza. I grew up in Remuka. I was born in Harare. We moved to Kadoma in 1976 when my dad came to live here. He was working as an electrician. We lived in SQ and Majibi, which is the worst parts of Remuka, before we relocated to Katsande and we relocated to Sai. That's where I grew up. I went to school here in Remuka. My first school was Chedonje, which is not too far from here. I went to Mnyaradzi when the school expanded. For my high school, I went to St. David's Bonda, which is in Mtare. After my O-level, the government changed the system on how people were zoned. And because my dad used to work for Bazungus, he wanted me to go to a school where he would match his maths. And I went to Jameson High School for my A-levels, which I didn't like very much. My first job, I worked for Zembank, which is now, I don't know what you call that bank now, but it was called Zembank then. That was my first job. I went there as a foreign teller. I was trained to do foreign currency. I was there for 2 years. Then I was asked to resign, family, And my second job, I worked at Blue Ribbons as a Catex clerk. I was there for another 2 years. Then I went to Harare, where I worked for Cabs Building Society. I was a tailor, a bank tailor. And due to some family, I had to leave that job, and I worked for ZESA until early 2000, when I went to the UK again. So when I got to the UK, things were not as easy as I thought. I worked as a cleaner, which I never thought I would, but I did. I had to use my skills to survive. I started doing hairdressing, and I opened up a salon called Lesedi Hair Salon in West Yorkshire, and we had that salon for about 10 years. When my kids were grown up, I decided to pursue again my educational journey. I went to Leeds, Bradford University in Leeds, where I did my biomedical sciences degree. It was very tough being with young people in class, and I was the oldest student and a female, but I graduated. I later moved from Leeds to go to London, hoping that I would be employed on the top market. I worked for a GP surgery as a medical receptionist. Then I worked for Firepath in the lab, which was always my dream. And when I worked at the lab with King's College Hospital, I really discovered myself that I was in the wrong place. I had pursued a career because of how it's written, but I've always been a philanthropist. I've always wanted to help people. So I decided to resign and follow my passion that I always had to help people, and to go back to where I grew up and give back the knowledge that I had. Because I felt in my job I was just a number, but when I come here I'm an asset, and I want to feel like an asset. There was a group of ladies in the UK who approached me, and they had a group called Kadoma, and the group didn't have a lot of following on social media platform, but because I like sharing stuff on social media, motivational things on social media platform, they approached me if I could join their group and push it up. I invited people to my house, and I gave them my idea. Instead of just having a group, why don't we become of influence and help, the underprivileged in Kadoma. Everybody agreed. We did the group, I did the campaign. As people work, people change. And when people changed, the group, I had to leave the group because the ethics and the beliefs had changed and I couldn't be there. So then I was approached by Jonathan Honey and Roderick Kamchkariwa, and they asked me if I could join their group since I've got the drive and passion for what I do. So Roderick came to the UK and we met at Huni's house in Bradford, and we agreed that we're going to create a group, that we're going to give back to the community, and we would use our strength to pull this. So Ikonnect was to connect the diasporians who were raised from Remoka, so that there's just one band. So even if a child grows up in Remoka, they shouldn't dream too hard, because someone has already traveled that path and someone will show them the path. And Mr. Huni offered this house for us to model ideas, and we wanted to be on the ground in the community so that we understand, because sometimes when people read things in the book, every community is different. There's no rule that applies to every community. Every community is diverse because of what happens in the community. So because of the way I am, I traveled more and I engaged more with the community. Ikonnect 2019, and when we started, we couldn't travel then. I had lost my friend in 2019 who grew up not far from here and who shared the same sentiments. So it was a very tough time for me personally, but I didn't stop, and having Facebook was an easier way to connect to a lot of people from Kadoma, giving you ideas and positive ideas, and 2020 we had our first general meeting here, and Mr. Huni came and showed us the house, and the house wasn't done properly, but the fact that he had given us a property, for me, I thought that was an honorable thing to do. And we're not very keen on the renovations because it's hard work. But if you stay in the UK, you understand you have to DIY a lot of things. Some people don't understand that. 2020, the COVID came, and we fundraised money to feed people in Remoka, but because we didn't have a clearance from the DA, we only did where we grew up. So this is Ward 6, so most of our work was done in Ward 6 and Ward 2. As you asked me how was the journey, sometimes it's like bees flying in a swarm. Some people get tired, and I've noticed that drive is different, expectations are different, and what people really want is very different. I feel when you help somebody, you shouldn't expect a monetary reward. It should be the results that you see in every person you help. That should give you satisfaction. But I think that value makes people have different concept about helping people. So as the journey went by, 2021, we started having engagement from a younger audience. And the younger audience, because they've got energy, they want things to do. So we had to be very diverse in our thinking, and so that we keep them motivated. So when we were renovating the house, we started the oxygen team. So the oxygen team will do the gardening, the oxygen team who do the planting of the trees, the oxygen team who would help with the painting, the oxygen team who do the cleanup campaigns. We've done more than 15 cleanup campaigns with the oxygen team. And it was easier working with children, unlike working with older adults who are expectant, that people expect if they come to help, give a hand, they need some sort of reward. monetary-wise, and that part of the journey, some people give up. They like the idea, but they don't want to travel the journey. Helping people or modeling an idea is the toughest thing ever. In the course of 2020, we had a group of actors who wanted to come to Zimbabwe to Rimuka especially, and one of them was my friend, and she always wondered why I speak highly of Rimuka. She said, what would we do to help? And I explained about the girl child, the challenges that I know I've traveled through as well, and we were organizing for them to come, and Mr. Kavaza joined us through Facebook. That's how we got to know him, and we started that journey. But unfortunately, they couldn't come because lockdown came in, and there were more complications. Some of the members were sick, and there was a lot of bans because they were coming from different countries. So that had to stop. But when Mr. Kavaza came here, most of the staff who were supposed to be working with us had left, and there was no one to look after the house. And us being in the UK, Mr. Kavaza said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." And Mr. Kavaza offered to stay. He said he sees the vision, he sees the passion, he'll stay, and he'll see where he takes it. And Mr. Kavaza being here has been a blessing, because as much as you've got ideas, if you've got somebody who can now push the idea on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, and stay within the community where it's so diverse and able to capture a few individuals to see the vision, I think it's the luckiest thing anyone can ever have. And not asking much, just wanting to see results. So with him being younger and being open-minded, we started experimenting with quite a lot of things, because young people will come with suggestions. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And we've been with that journey. But like I said, when you work in a group, when things finally mature, values change. And when values change, do you chase the values because you just want a name, or you want the deeds? And we have chosen to do the deeds. God thing is, having grown up in the same area, when you come back, people always think you've got a motive. And unfortunately, a lot of people thought I wanted to be an MP for someone on reason. From people close to me, the reception has not been very well. But from people who don't know me, have appreciated our efforts. I'm not sure, because people who know you doubt you, and people who don't know you look at the idea, not you. Because it's me. You grew up next door, and you're now telling us this. They don't see the value of that. But someone who doesn't know me, and I share my idea, because they are not judging me on a personal level. They're judging me on what I'm giving out. That bit of the community are very, very supportive. Like here where we are, all the neighbors here look after us. If managed properly, I see a link that can link the two. Home providing the space to work. The diasporans coming in with their expertise that they've harvested from everywhere. So if people capture it properly, diasporans come with a lot of knowledge. So I can see a process where it would improve quite a lot of things, even if in the simplest of things. From running systems, because when you go to diaspora, it's like you go back to a training session where you're taught. Unlike here, if I've got a degree, I can just go and work anyway. In diaspora, you don't do that. If you go to a place, you've got to be retrained, because they understand that what you learn, the human mind forgets. So if run properly, I'll say that again, it can be beneficial for the young ones especially, and for those in the diaspora, for them not to forget home, because parents have invested in people, and parents have exhausted their resources to educate and facilitate for their children, and the children have gone to live in diaspora, and they're now putting value in diaspora. They're buying houses in diaspora, everything, and the parents have been left with nothing. And the question sometimes I ask myself, was it worth it sacrificing for these kids? Because I feel like if someone invests in someone, you're expecting for a reinvestment. Is how they were living when they were giving everything to us. I feel like we need to give back to balance that, so that our parents feel that the journey they traveled was worth it. The biggest skill that we have really given to the kids is trust. Be someone who's trusted. We have taught them that there's no magic in the world. Everything is hard work. But it's not hard work, it's working smart. Because you can dig the whole day and not get anywhere. And you can decide not to dig and look for people to help you and achieve more. There's a big misconception when people feel you're coming from diaspora, you're loaded with money. And people are expectant for freebies. We try and discourage freebies. And we teach them time management, the importance of time, the importance of commitments, the importance of consistency, the importance of keeping good, valuable friends. Because having grown up in Remuka, people can just crown you king. I can walk with you down here and people will praise you. And if you live with those praises, you don't really grow because you feel you've reached the highest level. But when it comes to monetary value, after everybody is giving me those praises and I come back to my house, I don't have $1. So that fame, that praise is not good for me. So a lot of youngsters suffer with that fame, that when they walk around and people applaud them for having nothing, it's sad. And we have to teach them that life is not easy. And we want them to travel and see the world. And when you travel, you get to pick up other values that the school does not teach you, the community does not teach you. It's a skill that you pick when you travel. For me, what really pains me, having grown up in Remuka, is the lack of resources for children. There's no playground for children. There's nowhere for children to play. Children either play in the streets. There's no resources for children for them to develop their skills. There's nothing. And I would like the city fathers to make it easy for anybody who wants to help the youth, especially as we're lobbying for a community center. You've seen what you've seen today. So imagine if we're doing it in a community center and we engage quite a lot of people, children who have something to look forward to. And when we put kids together, we see a lot of skills, competition. We see how they interact with each other. It's a way for children to just be children, not fetching water or worrying about the electricity being there or not having food, but being children. So for me, I would want to see the girl child in Remuka lifted up. Schools, colleges. There's a lot of young mothers who are 14, 15, and They're intelligent, but unfortunately they've fallen into the trap. Just that, go back to school or do a skill. There's nothing here. There's nothing in that space. And having grown up from Remuka, I had my fair share of unfortunate bits, but because I had a father who was very solid in his values, I had a role model within the house. Wherever I went, I carried that because my father was a very strong believer in empowering the girl child. Part of being a biomedical scientist, you learn about the environment and the importance of the environment. I've always been an advocate for the environment. I believe when we plant and look after our spaces, it makes us, it's fulfilling, it's therapeutic, it helps with the mind. And I remember when we were young, because these houses were built, I could see them being built. And the people we had at that time, everybody planted a mango tree. And if your family didn't have a mango tree, they would look down and shine down. And I've seen people's attitude change towards the environment. And because our environment are changing, we need to educate our children so that if they look after the environment looks after us. So the cleanup campaigns, we are doing them. I know they're not effective, but I don't know how it can be done so that we can entice the community to be self-proud again. When you travel to other places, like I traveled to Japan, there was so many people, but it was very, very clean. They're big advocates for the environment. We went to Mexico. They're a big advocate for the environment, and my wish is to have more people who speak towards the environment so that people don't just live in environments that are unfavorable. It's a beautiful space if people just have the right information and right attitudes. So I'm very passionate about that.
So where do you think we are getting it wrong as a country in terms of environmental stewardship?
I feel schools should be the first source of, because I understand now curriculums have changed. We used to be given projects to do, and we would take them to school, and you do them at home. So imagine if 1,000 kids are given a project to plant a tree. So that's 1,000 trees. So if we've got 20,000 schools and everyone plants a tree at their house, that's 20,000 trees. So it's the education system. I think when you start with children, you build a nation. Because older people, if I go to someone older and I tell them, can we go and plant a tree, they will just look at me like I'm hungry. But if I tell a child, let's plant a tree, they will do it. When we were traveling the journey, the Ikonnect journey, and everyone was on lockdown, we couldn't do whatever we wanted to do because people were told to stay at home. So my brother kept complaining that he hasn't got money. Then I said to him, why don't we start something that generates money but within the community? So our first project was, I said, because people are feeling low because of the COVID, why don't we do their gardens? And my brother said, oh, okay. I said, why don't we start that and we call it, then my brother said, we'll call it Oxygen. So I told the group, I said, can we start Oxygen? Give back life. Oxygen is life. Make people happy again. So the children would go to people's gardens, do the gardens, water them and stuff. And everybody who had the garden done was left with a smile. So Oxygen was effective. Then we noticed the houses hadn't been painted for more than 50 years. So I came up with an idea that why don't we just repaint within the neighborhood? As you know, that some people think, oh, it's political. But for those people, we agreed. The houses looked lovely and everybody was happy. Oxygen was done. Then we moved Oxygen from Musai Street to here. And because there was nothing here, it was like this, everything, even the avocado tree wasn't there that you see over there. So we started Oxygen with the children. The older people obviously are not favorable to ideas, but young people, like they're marrying to ideas. So we started doing the flowers, we started doing the lawn, and it was easy to engage children with the oxygen, and to make them feel like they are part of something. We had workshops so that they feel like it was important, and we had younger people coming into oxygen, not just the ones physically doing the work. We had photographers, where the photographer would come, with musicians would sing about the oxygen. So oxygen became a space of creation and giving back life to almost non-existing things. If a world is looking down, if oxygen comes, it's looking bright. If a house is looking dirty, if oxygen team is looking bright. And we feel now we'll push with the oxygen, because I feel like it's we can, like, oxygen operate like an amoeba. It just goes anywhere and gels and brings life, brings joy. And we'd rather work with that because it's not static. It's ideas that come, and as they come, it's limitless. We can go anywhere, we can, incorporate anywhere. Just like how they used to have the Girl Guides. It's a space that if you allow other people to come in, other people can marry in the idea and have oxygen everywhere. So oxygen is the new movement. We grew up in a colonial era. We grew up where if you go to the city center, there were spaces you'd occupy and spaces you don't occupy. And in Kadoma, there used to be a shop near, it's now Pick and Pay. It used to be called Blue Jay. And in Blue Jay, it was a tea room, but strictly for white people. And the most you'd just look at that place and wonder, you couldn't get in. Going into town, we had to walk. We'd walk from Remuka through the hill and go up there. And it wasn't fun, And I remember when I was young, I used to question my mom, like, why do we have to do things the hardest way? But that was the way it was. When we got our independence, I got a chance to go to Jameson, which I didn't like. Because I felt at Jameson, I had to fit in. I had to lose my Remuka accent. I had to lose my Remuka behavior. I had to lose a lot of things to fit in. I had to speak a certain way, be a certain way, look a certain way. But I was just a girl from Remuka. I was just a girl from Remuka, and I was happy being a girl from Remuka. But that 2 years for me didn't do me any good, any growth. I resented the place, I resented everywhere, because I felt like I was washing away my identity to fit into a system that everybody thought would be good. So I was happy in Remuka, because Remuka for me was home. Having moved to the UK, and when people ask you where you're from, I don't shy away. I'm from Remuka. And some people, oh, it's dusty, it's this. But I am a girl from Remuka. Yeah. The streets molded me. They molded me for you. If you say I'm polite, it's from the streets of Remuka. If you say I'm this, it's from the streets of Remuka. Those people in that community is the one that raised me. The world saw a finished product, but the molding was done here. So I'm a girl from Remuka.